we're looking ahead to the premiere of a new film profiling a polarizing figure here in New Mexico's history, and that will be Robert Oppenheimer. New Mexico filmmaker Larry Sheffield's documentary pieces together old footage, declassified documents, and other research from months and years after the nuclear test at White Sands Missile Range. And this week on New Mexico in Focus Facebook page, I spoke with Mr. Sheffield about the inspiration behind his film and the continued fascination with Oppenheimer's legacy. You've got an interesting event coming up regarding a very specific time in Mr. Oppenheimer's history, and it's after Trinity. And we have spent so much time in our culture through Hollywood and other places talking about the before and the run-up and the during, but not so much after. Why did you want to cut it at this way and look at his life after Trinity?
Well, what's interesting is, so our film, for the benefit of the viewer, we talk a little bit about before, during, and after Trinity, but the biggest part of the film is after Trinity and all the things that happened after. My father wasn't involved in the military, but my grandfather was brought out to New Mexico to work at Los Alamos in the Manhattan Project, so I do have a personal connection. But anyway, I felt like I had a perspective that needed to be told, and I wanted to do 3 documentary films, tell the whole story of everything that was going on in New Mexico and southern New Mexico between that period of time. And we just couldn't do it all in one project. It's actually hard to try to do it in 3 different segments, but we have a trilogy that we're producing. We've done 2 of the 3 films, and the third one is about half finished. And all 3 of these will focus on just that moment in time around the Manhattan Project and the events that happened thereafter. And in the second film, which we're showing in Los Alamos this weekend, we really focus on Dr. Oppenheimer, because he was absolutely the pivotal personality of this whole story. And it was his actions and reactions that took place that we really try to focus on.
What is the continuing fascination with this man? I've read a lot about him. I've watched a lot about him, and it's so interesting, Larry. I don't know if we've ever wrestled it to the ground, who this man was.
Right.
Do you feel you have?
Oh, I mean, I told his grandson's in our film, by the way, and we interview him. And when I was out interviewing him, I said, I've really studied your grandfather, and I've really tried to get into his head, and I've read just about everything he said during this period of time, and I've tried to find every audio tape and film tape that I can that is about your grandfather. And he was a very, very complex yet simple man. He was very comfortable in New Mexico because he liked the simplicity of living out and horseback riding, hiking. He loved our foods, and he loved our people, and the people loved him. He was the kind of person that he didn't care if you were a scientist or the person working on his car. He would befriend you and be friendly and get to know you. And so he was a really interesting guy, had a lot of charisma. And you hear all the stories about the scientists through all their trials and tribulations. It was Oppenheimer's leadership and charisma that kind of got him, off to the next beat. So a really interesting guy. He spoke French, he spoke English. I'm sure he spoke a little bit of Spanish. And so he was just a really interesting person.
Did he document a lot of his thoughts in life in writing? Was he one to scribe things in a journal? And do we have a trail that way to his inner thoughts?
I don't think he kept a daily journal. I think what he did more of was speak. And, he spoke during during the events in Los Alamos, but he spoke even more after the events in Los Alamos. So our film covers a lot of his speeches, and having to go through those speeches so I could find the little bits of gold that are in all of that material. We have some really interesting things that he says that are very deep and personal convictions that he had. And so it's those speeches that really tell the story. But I've never found a journal or a lot of there's a lot of things that he wrote, but not on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. We're talking to Larry Sheffield. He's the director of Oppenheimer After Trinity, which will debut on April 22nd. That's Saturday at the Sala event at the Los Alamos Event Center. We'll talk about that at the end of the interview. As Larry mentioned up top, those are sold out. That is sold out, but there are other screenings coming up. How is it he is so polarizing still today? I mean, 1945 was a long time ago, Larry. What is it about is it him? We've got a Christopher Nolan dramatization coming up this summer. We had that Manhattan television series for a couple of years out of WGN in Chicago a few years ago. Everybody wants to kind of keep taking their cut at Dr. Oppenheimer. And it's so fascinating. What is going on here? All these years later.
Well, Dr. Oppenheimer it's an American story. It's a story about where, he's minding his own business, teaching in Berkeley, and he gets approached about this, thing that is of a national concern. He wants to do his patriotic duty along with others, even though they're maybe not as focused on the politics of it. They realize the urgency of us not having a madman take us over because he gets this technology first. And so he puts all of his resources night and day, his blood, sweat, and tears, and he's successful. And then, it's the American story about the power and the greed in some ways, wants to destroy the very thing that he created. The whole time he is trying to warn everyone, the politicians, the people, that this is what we've created. It needs to be handled as gently and carefully and methodical. And it's almost as if, he wasn't listened to. So there's a lot of American story attributes. There's a lot of human story attributes that are in this one personality of this man. And as I mentioned earlier, he's as sophisticated to the most, he can sit down and shop talk with Einstein, but at the same time, I found so many stories where he befriended people that, his mechanic, his favorite place where he ate, he got very close to the folks that owned, that particular cafe near Los Alamos. So he was the kind of guy that, once again, he befriended everybody.
Mm-hmm. That is kind of interesting. A little insight into the man there, because it's easy to think of him as just this standalone character living in a bubble, just hung up on what, the everyday life of Mr. Oppenheimer is not something we think about generally. Did you learn something new in your research and in your goal to get this film done? Was it something about Dr. Oppenheimer that surprised you? You hadn't realized it previously?
I think just the tragedy of the story. I went into this with a whole lot of different ideas and thoughts on how to present it. But the thing that kept coming back to me was the tragedy of what was done, taking away his security clearance, and the fact that he, lived his entire life to the very end trying to persuade his peers and the people at the time about this novel power. And I don't think he was ever ashamed of doing the job, but he certainly wanted us, the world, to work together in harmony and to try to control this genie out of the bottle, as you would call it.
That brings us to the screenings and the folks that you're working with in Los Alamos. They are tickled, obviously, to be involved with you. Tell us about what's for folks, that don't know what Sala is and the organization. Tell us about that a little bit, if you would, and we'll talk about how folks can see the film after a fashion.
Absolutely. So Los Alamos has one theater, and it closed. It was a commercial theater, but it kind of shut down, and a very innovative gentleman bought it that still wants to show films and also have a kind of a community center where people can come and have different events and different community things. And so when I was showing the very first film that we had done, Alamogordo, Center of the World, Trinity, 1945, we had the opportunity to show that film in the lodge on the very day of the Trinity test, July 16th. And it was just really an honor for me to be there. But I met Alan and he said, you know, I have a theater that's available, and maybe on your next film, if you want to show it, we can do that. And we decided, Dr. Oppenheimer's birthday would be a great time to do that. And I promised the people of Los Alamos that this is their film. It belongs to them. There's a lot of footage that so many of them are going to see that they've never seen before. And so I said, you know, I want to show it in your community first. And I want you guys to be the first ones to have the advantage of seeing this.